Well, today I got a few thoughts in my mind that have been really good. But first, I think first I'd like to start with a story that just happened today. Actually, it was something that was really touching, really powerful. I took my wife and my two younger kids to an assembly that my kids had at school. My older two were in for Veterans Day, and I've got an uncle who served in Vietnam, and we invited him, and we invite him every year, and then he came and they celebrated him, and it was a beautiful event, you know. Well, I spent a bit of time with my family after that a little bit. We just went and we took the kids out early from school and spent a little bit of time together, and just really a pleasant afternoon. And when we got home, the there was I went into our house, and there was a letter had been stuffed into our house, and it was one of those things that it just, you open the door and it falls down and you have no idea what it is. But it was a letter from someone. It wasn't didn't say who it was from. They just said to our family, and for our it was for our trip to Romania. Where next year we're going to Romania. My wife hasn't been back to see her brothers in over 10 years now, and we're going to be taking the whole family back. And inside the envelope there's just $100 bill. And it was one of those things that you don't really expect. Obviously don't expect, but it was just it was so touching. I have no idea who it was from. I have no idea. They I don't live in a wealthy area. I don't live in a lot of my friends, people, acquaintances at church. It would be a great sacrifice if of them. I mean, it blew me away. I have no idea who had done such a thing, but it was so touching. It's it was it was a just a beautiful moment, and the kids were it's kind of interesting. Like, we've had hard times in our life. We've had times where we didn't have much. As I've mentioned before, we went to school. Like, I finished. I did 4 years of college in computer science. While I was going to school, I was working and providing for my family so that my wife could stay home with our kids. We had our first daughter my first semester, and so we had our first daughter then, and my we had by the time I graduated we had three daughters, and I graduated in 4 years. We did it. I did it quickly. I took summer school. I did have to retake a few classes and stuff in it, but we did it at a local a state school, and we were able to do that without going into debt, which was a huge blessing for us. I graduated and we didn't have any debt. I was able to pay for schooling and for providing for our family in those 4 years. And we moved every year, just about like clockwork. We were always trying to find a place that was cheaper, a place that would accommodate better, that we could be closer. We always were trying to find a place that would suffice, you know. And there were times where every every gas of tank was accounted for in the paycheck. We knew that if we went into town and forgot to get something for our groceries, we didn't have money for gas to go again. I I would have to skip class because class was in a different town at that time, because we didn't have it. There was a Christmas that our kids were young, and So our kids were young, and it looks like it's not even recording. Oh, good. Well, not good, but I get awkward. I'm just gonna take a drink. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience buffering. Well, I hope it's not. Maybe I'll just record it and and upload it. But anyways, I'll just keep going. So we've had tight times, and we haven't been as tight as we have been in the past. But as your kids get older, as your family grows, your needs grow, and so we still have to be careful and stuff. But we're doing fine. We're doing okay. But it was it was just interesting. It hit me because I felt like it feels like I want to be the one that helps others. That there's that feeling, there's that pride of being able to stand and to help other people stand and be able to pitch in and to help someone else, and that's a great feeling. But when it's you that needs the help, it's touching to see others do the same. It's touching to see others who pitch in without being asked or without being just out of the goodness of their heart. There's something that brings that attitude of gratitude in. And I'm sure I'll never find out who it is. But I'm sure they would never watch. Like, I don't know, nobody watches this. I don't expect anybody to watch these, but thank you. It was a neat experience to have my kids come in and to explain to them what somebody had done, and to explain to them the goodness of people, and to have them kneel down, and we prayed and we thanked God, and we asked Him to bless that family that pitched in for us, that sacrificed for us. As the scriptures say, I pray that as they serve in secret, that they are blessed and open, and that the windows of heaven are poured out upon them. Because that's the best kind of giving is anonymous giving. When you can get away with something that nobody can see, that's a great feeling. That brings up the community, that brings up everybody, and it's beautiful. The thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit today was about being intentional with our choice to follow God. And there's the saying, the road to hell is paved in good intentions. It was funny, I was on a walk with my kids a few days ago, I don't know, it was a while ago, but my one daughter wanted any litter she found, she wanted to pick it up, and she wanted to get a bag and pick it up, and I was like kind of fine with it, but it was also, and they had glass bottles and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, I don't want you touching that stuff, just because I didn't want her to get cut, and I didn't want her, but I remember having this long conversation about the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and just because we have good intentions doesn't mean our actions are going to be good, and we need to think about them. And I got preachy, which I do with my kids all the time. My wife teases me about it, which is she should. But I remember talking to her, and my wife pointed it out that day that you gotta. She's just doing the best she can. Like, there's a time and a place, and I didn't think right of the time and the place, and I thought about it, and she was right. And I remember talking to my daughter and saying, hey, I was trying to teach a big lesson and something that's good, and I want you to know these big things. But also, don't let me distract you from trying to do good either. And the thing that I wanted to point out is that being intentional. We first need to intentionally decide if we want to follow God. Like, is that what we want? And as we decide that, that's kind of a decision that we make. And it was really neat. I was in Romania teaching. I was a missionary, and I was in a city called Timișoara, and Timișoara has this beautiful big Orthodox cathedral right in the middle of Centru. The thing's gorgeous, and there's a river that comes by, and it's got these bridges, and the river kind of the cathedral's built in like a nook of the river, and then there's open Centru where it's like cobblestones, and it's just this wide garden area and little shops all around. Well, on these bridges, there were these little gypsy kids that would always sit there, and they would always have paint, and they would be huffing their paint, and it's one of those things that you see a kid that's 8-9 years old in rags just on the street huffing paint, and like every day you walk by him, and we would talk to him and stuff, and we'd get to know him a bit, but sometimes they were lucid, sometimes they weren't. And I remember one day in particular, we had these little pass-along cards that were just a picture of Jesus Christ, and it had like a scripture on the back or something like that. And I remember talking to this gypsy kid, and there was probably 4 of them there, but I was talking to this one in particular, and he was a little younger, and he was pretty out of it that day. He was the one that was usually pretty friendly, but that day he was pretty out of it. He was pretty. You could tell he had been huffing, and so I remember talking to him, and I remember thinking, I wanted to give him a chance to follow Christ. I didn't know how. I didn't have much, but I had the pass-along card, and I said, hey, I'll trade you that bag of paint for the pass-along card. And when I say bag of paint, they took plastic bags, they would put paint in it, and they breathe into it, huffing. That's what they would do to get their high, but also to fight the hunger. These kids were literally starving, and I wish I was more sensitive of it at the time. Every now and then we would bring them bread or whatever, just if we had something, we'd give it to them. But anyways, I remember asking him. I was like, hey, I'll trade you this for that. Like, I'll trade you this picture of Christ for that. And he's like, yeah, I'll take the picture. And I was like, let's trade. And he's like, oh no, and then I was like, kuchinetsi, and like, what I say is like, who do you hold with? That's kind of how that would translate. But when you say that, that's how you would say, like, what team do you support in soccer? Kuchinetsi. Like, who's your guys? Like, who, like, kind of, it's more of a, like, who are your people? And I was like, kuchinetsi, Christos, Sawasta. And I was like, who do you hold with? Who, Christ or this, the paint? And he looked at the paint, and he looked at the picture, and he's like, I hold with Christ. With Christ. And I was like, that's right. And so I traded him, and then I tore the paint bag and I threw it in the trash. And every day, next day I came back, he had another bag of paint, but every day I'd offer him that from when I'd see him. And it was so neat for me to see how he was even high as a kite. He was willing to get rid of his bag of paint so that he could stand by Christ. He was willing to stand by Christ. When given the choice, he chose Christ. And life is not that simple. Life's not just choose good or bad. Because if that was that simple, I think most people would just choose good. when it's given to you in a situation where you can see, okay, do I stand by Christ or that? It's easy to choose. I'm gonna stick with Christ. I'm him. I'm his. I want to follow him. That's a good choice to make. But when the choice is not so clear and it's more of, well, are you gonna open your mouth and say something, or are you just gonna walk by and not say anything? Sometimes it's not as clear. Sometimes the right thing is to not say something. Sometimes, like Christ, when he was being questioned by the Pharisees, he said nothing. They didn't deserve it. He called them foxes because they were wicked men. When he was questioned by Pilate, he gave him a response. But, there's a time and a place for things. Sometimes it's the right thing to stand up and say, no, I stand by Christ. And sometimes it's the right thing to just bear his cross. And it's one of those things that it's not always clear what the right thing to do is. So the important thing is that we're intentional about what we do. When we don't do something intentionally, the actions that we have they're just what happens. They're just kind of how it goes. You go with the flow. You're like a ship without a rudder. You're like you're easily moved to and fro, not having that rock of Christ as your foundation. But when you're intentional and you're saying, okay, I'm going to intentionally read the scriptures. I'm going to intentionally pray every day. I'm going to intentionally do these things. I'm going to intentionally go to church. Not just because, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do, or I guess I'll go. My wife wants me to go. Not just because, oh, it's probably good. But no, I choose to follow Christ, so I'm going to intentionally do this. That's where we become disciples. The key, the base word in disciple is discipline. And discipline takes intention. We can't just go through life and go through the motions and expect to be on the path that will lead us to Christ. We have to take deliberate steps. And the thing that's beautiful about it is God doesn't... We're not... I think God's patient with us. I think that He's wants us to grow little by little, as much as possible, but He wants us to grow, and He knows that, we're going to fall short. That's why He sent His Son. That's why Christ came. Is because we're not perfect, and we're not going to be perfect. But through Christ, we may be cleansed. We may be made whole and perfect again. We're commanded to be perfect. Christ gave us that commandment. Even as the Father. Even as He is. And we're not that. We're just us. But when we're intentional, it doesn't matter where we're at. It matters where we're going. We're intentionally on the path. I love the fact that when we make progress towards God, we start the trajectory. We start like the direction. I don't know. I really focus in my mind, at least, about direction. I know that I'm imperfect. I've got so many things wrong with me that I need to fix, that I need to get better at. We all do. But I do. And I know that. But I'm getting better. I'm getting better. And that's what I need. It doesn't matter that I keep messing up. As long as I keep getting up and I intentionally try again. It's a beautiful thing to realize that this life, the whole process of repentance, it's a lifelong thing. It's something that we're going to take our whole lives for. And one of the things that Satan does is he tries to get us to get discouraged on ourselves. He tries to get us to lose the intention. Sometimes it'll be guilt, like, oh, you're never going to be good enough. Sometimes it'll be the things that push us down, like a discouragement when we fail, not when it's out of our hands. Sometimes it'll be we succeed and we are blessed with riches or with strength, and we become prideful and we lose that intention. There's lots of ways that Satan tries to get us. I loved how C.S. Lewis put it. I think it was C.S. Lewis, but he basically said, it's the quote that I'm thinking has something along the lines of, Satan's not that creative, but he's effective and he's persistent. He's been doing it a long time. He's been tempting man for a long time. And so we can get a fairly good idea of how he's going to tempt us. But just because we know how he's going to do it doesn't mean it's less effective. So just realize that's not what you want. Don't follow that lie. Don't follow the deceiver. But intentionally follow Christ. Well, rock the party, everybody. It's been a great day.